Welcome to my 2019 hikes of the year. These are my favorite ones from the year that I'd like to share with you. My goal this year was to get 52 hikes, and I'm probably going to end up being a little bit short of that. An injury late in the season kept me from hiking, but we still got in some great hikes over the year. Let me introduce you to some of my hiking partners. Tristan got 28 hikes with me this year. Vicky got around 8 hikes with me this year. And then I had several people that had at least 2 hikes with me. Sarah and Sadie had at least 2 or 3 hikes with me. My good buddy Ed also had a couple of hikes with me. I started off the year this year doing mailbox with my friend Doug. It's become a tradition to do that every year, as we usually get up early in the morning and hike up to the top of mailbox. Always a great day and a good way to start the year. Tristan and I did our snow camping trip this year again in January. We went over to the east side of the mountains and did Hex Mountain. We got a little bit of snow and some cold temperatures, but it was a lot of fun and we had a good time even though I wasn't feeling super well. One of the best hikes we did this year with some of the best views was Granite Mountain. This was about the earliest in the year I've done Granite Mountain. It's not always been my favorite hike, but this year it was spectacular. We got up on a bluebird day and just saw some really great views. The sky was blue, the clouds were pretty, we could see all the way down to Mount Rainier. It was a good hike. We were in pretty good shape, so it wasn't too taxing, but we also had to be somewhat careful coming back down as the ridge was a little bit exposed. I also knocked off one of my bucket list hikes, which was Dirty Harry's Peak. The good thing about Dirty Harry's is that you get to see some old logging equipment. We got up into the snow and got to hike into snow, and it was a beautiful day of snowfall as well. Just an overall really good hike to do. One of the most emotional hikes we do, of course, is the one that we remember Seth and the date that he passed away on. We went to Franklin Falls this year with some good friends and hiked up to the falls and just remembered Seth. As always, it's a sad occasion, but he loved the outdoors and he loved this area of Snoqualmie Pass, as we often fished and hiked there. In an attempt to get ready for Mount Rainier this year, Tristan and I did Mount Hood again. It was my third attempt at Mount Hood, the 2 other ones being unsuccessful due to various reasons. But this year we had a great day with no wind, and Tristan and I made it to the top. It was brutal, however. I definitely wasn't in as good a shape as I should have been, and I went out too fast, leaving the ski area. So by the time I got to the top, I was pretty exhausted. But we got back down safely, and in the end had a very good day, and hope to do it again. Mount Hood is certainly one of those ones that challenges you, and we felt good that it was our first hike that we did solo by ourselves. Tristan and I also spent a night at Mason Lake and Bandera Mountain. We hiked up to the lake and spent the night, and then woke up the next morning and climbed up to Bandera, where we could look down onto our campsite. The ice was just beginning to thin on the lake, so Tristan tried doing a little fishing with no luck. It was a nice camping trip. We had a good time, and some of the views were great as well. The lake is always a nice place to go, even though it's a very crowded lake with lots of activity. This year I did a birthday hike up to Glazervation by Mount Rainier. One of my goals was to do more hiking around Mount Rainier this year, and I did this one twice, once by myself and once with Tristan. It was a nice hike, and I got some good views, and it was, again, a beautiful day. So I enjoyed that area and always loved getting down to Mount Rainier and hiking in that area. I did about 3 or 4 hikes in the Mount Rainier area, with some of them coming up a little bit later in this show. One of my favorite hikes of the year was Deep Creek Trail. I got up early on a Tuesday morning to do this trail, and could have spent the whole day hiking as I needed it both mentally and spiritually. The great thing about this trail is that it starts off in a burned area, and then ends up being in a really nice area that the growth is starting to come back. It reminded me of grief and what we've been through the last couple of years with Seth. For me, it was a very much of a spiritual hike that day, and I couldn't get enough of the hike. We did several lakes with my buddy Alan, his son, and his son-in-law, and it was a great overnight camping trip that we took. The hike up to the first lake is really brutal and hard, and then the next day we hiked into several other lakes. It took us to get to the third lake before we finally really started to catch some fish. Alan and I did several hikes this year, as he's one of my all-time hiking favorite friends as well. Overall, it was a really good trip. We had a really good time. We did end up catching some fish on the second day, and although I was pretty tired by the time I got back home, I'll definitely do this lake again. One of the surprise hikes of the year was Crystal Lake. I did it on the 4th of July, and a good buddy of mine, Doug, had told me about how you could go up to Crystal Peak, work your way across the ridge, back down to the PCT, and then come back out. It was a great day with some great views, and I bumped into another hiker, and she ended up joining me for the day. We had a really good conversation, got to know each other, and shared stories. As we came back down into Crystal Lake, some of the views are just spectacular, like this one here. Highly would recommend that, and looking forward to doing it again, hopefully next year. In the end, it ended up being one of my favorite hikes because of the scenery and the company. It's always good to get out in nature and meet new friends. Another great hike that we did this year was Mount Adams. It was on our list of mountains to do, and so Tristan and I found a really good weekend to go do it. This was several weeks before we were going to do Mount Rainier, so we felt as though it would be a good training hike to prepare for Rainier. We drove down and spent the night and got up early in the morning and began hiking. It was a long day. It took us exactly 12 hours from the time we left the parking lot to the top and then to get back down. Tristan is always a great hiking partner. He's always there to encourage me. He's in such better shape than I am that it seems easy to him, but he's got to drag me along. It's always good to have somebody motivating me. One of the hikes that had been on my bucket list this year was Grand Park down by Mount Rainier. So Vicki and I found a nice weekend day to drive down there. She wasn't real crazy about the dirt road to get up to the trailhead, but the trailhead was a nice trail, not super hard, and gave me a chance to unwind my legs a little bit. There was some cloud cover around the mountain, but it was still beautiful. We got to look at wildflowers and visit as we climbed up to the mountain and got to take a look around. All in all, it was one of my favorite hikes of the year, and certainly one that I was glad I did. I hope to go back when the wildflowers are more out. This brings us to the big daddy of them all, Mount Rainier. Tristan and I decided to try to climb Mount Rainier again with Footprints of Fight this year. Unfortunately, the winds kept us from getting to the top. We did make it to Camp Muir, where the winds were 60 to 84 miles an hour. We had a good time training, making new friends, and getting to see the mountain. The weather had been great up until the day we tried to summit, but unfortunately, you can never control weather. I did get to meet one of my idols, Lou Whitaker, the famous mountaineer. It was a great trip, and we look forward to doing it again next year and hopefully making it to the summit. Buddy Allen has told me about this hike for many years, Upper Wildcat Lake. So Tristan and I decided to do an overnight camping trip up to that lake. It's a great hike. You go past Snow and Jim Lake, which are beautiful lakes, and then the crowds thin out, and you get to work your way to Upper Wildcat. We had some great fishing up there at the lake. We actually swam across the lake and found an island, which we fished from as well. It was one of those ones that we definitely want to do again next year. Another hike that I really enjoyed this year was doing Silver Peak from the Snoqualmie Pass area. I'd done it the year before from a different trailhead and had a good time. This day I was definitely needing some long, slow distance to clear my brain and calm my soul, and I got about 15 or 17 miles in this day. It was definitely good for me. This brings us to one of the most adventurous hikes we did of the year, which is the Enchantments. We'd done it the year before in one day, but this year we actually won the lottery and got an overnight camping spot that we got to spend the night up in the Encore Enchantments. We hiked in there. Now, for anybody that's done this hike, they know how hard it is. You work your way 5 or 6 miles up to the first lake, and then you work your way across a boulder field, and then you have to go up Asgard Pass, which is extremely difficult. Vicki had told us that she would do this hike with us, and so she came with us, as did her friend Jill. But it was a hard hike for them, as it takes a lot of energy to get to the top of that pass. But they hung in there and did a great job. We spent the night in the Core, had a good time visiting, but the winds kicked in, so we didn't get a lot of sleep that night. We woke up the next morning and hiked out. They say it's only like 12 miles or something, but my goodness gracious, it ends up being a really long day that second day. And I swear, the whole hike entire is like 23 miles, where they say it's really only 19 miles. But we were stubborn and really had no choice and worked our way out. I was real proud of Vicki this weekend as she conquered some of her fears. She doesn't like heights and dangerous situations, and there are some sketchy areas on this hike. But of course the views are great, and you can't beat some of the most beautiful country that happens in Washington. We're glad we did it. Vicki says she'll never do it again, but of course the rest of us are maybe chomping to do it. Another hike that was on my list for this year was the Third Burrows and Fremont Lookout at Mount Rainier. So the week after we did the Enchantments, I called Ed and Sarah and said, hey, how about go doing that with me on a Saturday? We got up there and hiked in. I think we put in 12 or 13 miles this day. Again, it was a beautiful day. The mountain was sticking out really pretty, and we had some great views. We had some good time visiting and had a good time just getting to hang out with each other and see some of the great views that Mount Rainier has to offer. Looking forward to doing this one again next year. Another special hike that we did this year was with our friend Morgan. She knew Seth in math class at the high school. I decided to start a YouTube channel taking people that knew Seth hiking and hearing their stories about Seth. This one turned out exactly like I hoped it would. Finally, we tried Mount St Helens on Thanksgiving Day, and as a lot of you know, I had a fall on Mount St Helens that bashed my eye, sprained my ankle, and generally was just a rotten day overall on the mountain. But we did end up meeting a new friend, Scott, as he found our hat on the mountain, and because of the story and social media, we ended up making it onto King 5 News, which was pretty cool as well. 2019 had some great hikes with some great views and some great stories. Right now I sit at 46 hikes, and I've got 3 or 4 more planned, but I'm not sure if I'll push to 52. But next year I'll start all over again and try to do it and get to the 52 that I hope to do this year. I hope to see you on the trails this next year. Get out and enjoy nature.